Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you're connecting in from. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us once again for another AMETEK Crank webinar. Today, in our advanced user training session for Storyboard, we're going to be covering, how you can leverage components, and more particularly, the new enhancements we made with our latest release of Storyboard to really help speed up your GUI development. Just to let you know, today's session will be recorded, so that way if you do need to drop off for any point in time, or if you maybe have a colleague that you feel would benefit from this particular topic, we will make the access to the on-demand recording available within the next couple of days. Also, because we do have a guest speaker today that's very well knowledgeable within the particular topic, we will be answering any questions that you have at the end of today's session. So using the Q&A window that you have on your screen, please present all questions via that method. Also, if you haven't followed us on any of the social platforms, we are active on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. You can follow us using the hashtags GUI development or hashtag Crank Storyboard. We are lucky enough today to have Rodney Dodal, who is the manager of product development here at AMETEK Crank, and one of the folks that actually worked on the new enhancements we're going to be diving into today. And of course, like we're going to be covering off, we're going to be doing a quick intro into Storyboard in case it's the first time that you've been exposed to Storyboard. Also, we'll talk about what components are and how you can access them within Storyboard. And then more importantly, we'll talk about how you can go about and modify the components that you build within one application so you can easily reuse them for others. And then we'll answer any questions that we have at the end. So let's quickly jump in and talk about Storyboard. You know, the founders of Storyboard really set out to build a solution that could help remove the inefficiencies that they, and of course their developer colleagues, often encountered when developing GUI applications for embedded devices. So based upon over 2 decades of experience in embedded systems, they built Storyboard really to remove the barriers or issues that impeded a really efficient development process and that hindered the creating of exceptional GUI applications and a relatively quick and easy process, really allowing them to get to on time and on budget. So this is all achieved by decoupling the front end GUI from the back end logic. So what that really allowed is Storyboard to provide a collaborative workflow that enables GUIs, designers, and developers to work together in parallel to really build an exceptional HMI application at the same time. AMETEK Crank is also a services company. So if you need a prototype developed fast for maybe a proof of concept that you have with key stakeholders, or maybe you have a concept but not the time or in-house resources to really produce it, or maybe you're just simply looking for ways that you can optimize the performance of your GUI application that was built using Storyboard. No matter what you're trying to do, our team of Storyboard designers and developers are here to make your embedded project easier. We can help you from anywhere from start to finish, from planning, implementation, maintenance of your GUI application, or placing it through a rigorous testing process to uncover any issues that could impact the performance of your product moving forward. So if you find yourself in a situation, whether that's now or in the future, definitely reach out to our team of experts and find out how they can help you. Also, if you haven't visited our help center yet, definitely there you can find a wealth of information, from getting started videos that really kind of dive into the different elements that Storyboard provides to give you that kind of high-level walkthrough of how to utilize that feature of functionality, getting more down into knowledge base articles, which really kind of dive into a particular aspect of the tool or the process of developing GUI applications, or even this is where you can also find past advanced user training sessions. So maybe this is you just recently joined the family of Storyboard users, and this is the first one you've attended. We've been doing this now for over a year, and so there was a wealth of back catalog of training sessions for you to access there. We also have our community section where you can pose questions to other like-minded users, or maybe have someone from AMETEK Crank answer your question for you. So definitely, if you have not checked it out, I recommend going and taking a look at it today. And with that being said, this is a good opportunity for me to hand things over to Rodney, who's really going to kind of dive into today's topic, which is, again, leveraging components in Storyboard GUI application creations. Rodney?
Hey, Scott. I'm just going to grab the screen from you here. And awesome. So, yeah, let's start with Storyboard here. So today we're going to talk about components. And one of the things that Storyboard does well is it provides you a lot of different ways to sort of achieve similar goals. So what I hope to do throughout this AUT is to show you when and where it might be useful to use a component and how you can leverage it to sort of save yourself some time when you're actually building up your UI. So I'm going to start with one of our sample projects, which is the thermostat sample project. So I'm going to pull this in. It's down here. So we're going to open up this thermostat project, and you can see it's a ready to go sample. And I'm just going to simulate it. So I'm going to click on the simulate button here just to kind of show you what we're dealing with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to componentize these buttons right here, these slider buttons. And I'll show you why I'm going to componentize them as I go through. So let's say your UI, you have a particular look or feel that you want to have for certain UI elements inside of it. That's where you can leverage components to sort of give you the ability to create the same element over and over again and have it behave and look the same way. So to do this, I'm going to start off by just selecting this button here, and I'm going to create a group for it. So I'm just going to add a group, and I'm just going to call it the slider group. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because when you create a component, the root element that you create the component from is sort of provides the functionality that you're going to have accessible to you. So as I'm walking through this example, I want to make some changes to sort of the layout of how this button is built up. So I want to have a group so that I have the ability to add new controls as I go through. If I just selected this control, which I could do, and create a component from it, then all I really have the ability to do at that point is modify render extensions and just basically play within the sandbox of that control. But I want to be able to actually do something a little bit more, restructure the controls a little bit to provide a little bit more functionality as I'm building up this component. So components can be created from controls or groups, and that's, I'm going to basically pick a group to create this component. So I'm just going to drag this into the group, and I'm just going to rename it because it's no longer the AC control. It is now going to be, oh, sorry, I'm just going to double click on it. It is now the slider control. And I'm also going to resize my group here just to make it sort of the same size roughly as the control. All right, so now I've got the slider group. And what I can do is I can then go to components and I can say create new component. And I will call it the slider component. Actually, slider button is probably a better one. And I'll give it a description because one of the things I'll show later on is you can share your components with coworkers. And so therefore you might want to put in a description just to sort of explain what this component does. So this is a button that slides side to side. I would sing Ariana Grande at this point, but nobody wants to see or hear that. So we'll just move on. So I've created the component. Once I've created the component, it will automatically detect what it needs to be a fully featured component. But if there's something that it doesn't pick up on, you can go through and add in resources that it should reference, so that when you pull this component in someplace else, it will pull those resources in if they don't exist. So in this case, I don't need to actually add in any other resources. I can just move on to the next step, which is, what do I need to pull in from the actual model to make this component work? Now, when I simulated this, you saw the button was sliding from side to side. That is being done by the slider toggle. Now, the reason the component creation didn't pick up on the slider toggle immediately is because we're actually using Lua code to invoke the slider toggle animation. So there was nothing to actually say that the button needed this. So I'm just going to add it in after the fact, because I know that I need that slider toggle animation to actually make the slider button move from side to side. So I'll finish, and yes, I want to replace. And then if you so now this will open up the components view down here in the left-hand side, in the bottom left-hand corner. And if you click on your slider, it'll give you a component preview, and it will give you the description that you've put in. And you can double click on that, but you can right click on it as well and select edit, and it will pull up an editor that will allow you then to modify this component. So these are some of the enhancements that we've put into 7.1. In the past, when you created a component, you could only modify existing attributes that were a part of that component. You couldn't add or remove them. So now what we can do is we can actually go through and change things and make them, make it different than what it was, so that we can grow it. So I'm going to run through a couple things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this slider image, because the slider image is black, and maybe we don't want to be that dark. Maybe we want to be a little bit more lighthearted. So I'm going to grab this image that I've already created, and I would like bonus points because I recolored this image myself. Now, I'm an engineer by trade, and if you've seen any of my other videos, I often talk about the fact that I do not really have an artistic bone in my body, but I recolored this image all by myself using Photoshop, and I believe I deserve bonus points for that. So I'm going to take that, and then I'm just going to paste it into my images here. And then I'm going to edit the component to actually reference that new image. So now I can go through and I can change the slider image to be the new slider. So I called it slider update. So I'll do a quick search, slider update, and there it is. Now I'll save my component. Now when you save it, it's going to ask you if you need to pull in anything else, and I don't. So I'm just going to make sure that I keep the selection on that slider toggle and go through. Now when I come back, you'll notice that it didn't really update automatically, and that's because we don't want to just totally destroy. Maybe there's some things that you don't want to have updated, but what you can do is you can go through and click that slider, and then you say update instances, and it finds the instances that are actually referenced by that component in your model. And if you click OK, it will now update that button. And so now we've updated it. So what you can see is, if I wanted to replace these now to actually have my new slider button, I can drag these out. Now these are going to go to the wrong layer, because this layer is big and it's on top. So I'm just going to drag them down to my fan layer here. And this one to group 2, because I've already got a group in this layer. So move those down. So now I've got them all on the same layer. You can see they all have the nice new blue button that I wanted. And if I run it, they will all have the same functionality. So I've got that, working the way I want. I've got this nice slider button, and I can drag this out at any point inside my application and create a slider button very, very quickly. I don't have to write any new code. I don't have to copy or paste. And you could accomplish this by just copying and pasting the control, but it's really at the point when, what if you want to make changes? If you want to make changes to that control, you now have to remember every place where you copied and pasted it and go and make those changes to it. So this is the strength of using a component, because if I want to change this, if I want to make it something, change the styling on it or change what that animation does, I only have to change it once, update the references, and then every place where I've used that component will get that new feature. So I'm going to go back and I'll highlight this again, just to a certain degree. So one thing that we'll notice is that this is one control right now, and it's only got an on off. right? And that's in the actual image in the background. So if we scroll through our images down here in the images view, you'll see that there's a slider base, which is the on off. Well, what if you wanted to translate that text? We got the text that came in from the PSD file. It was an actual image, and well, we need on off to be translatable. Well, we can't really translate an image, or we'd have to put in an image for every single one that we want to have a translation. That's not really feasible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this component up now, so that what I can do is then change it so that it's actually text. So as I said, I've created a group as the root of my component. So now I can add controls to it. And the first control I'm going to add is an image control. I'm going to call it slider background. Finish that off. Now I need to select an image, and I'm just going to take my new background, which is no text. Oh, I have that one too. Yes. Sorry, I didn't copy and paste that one in yet. Also, I removed the text from this image using Photoshop, so I get double the bonus points at this point. So now I paste that in here, and I can go back to this control, the slider background control, and change the image to be slider background with no text. So I keep the colors, I got rid of the text, and I want this control to be the same size as this control. So I'm just gonna 6, 140, 58. So I'm just gonna type those in very quickly so that I can get the same sort of size. Oops, 58, I believe. All right, now you can notice it's on top, so I can just reorder it. And now I've got, the slider background in the background. Now it's covered by that text. So what I have to do is go to that original control and remove the image render extension from that. And now, voila, the text is gone. So now I want to add that text in a way that I can actually modify it at a later point in time if I need to do a translation on it. So I'm going to add in 2 new controls, and I'm going to call them slider on text, and it's going to be a text render extension. And we're just going to make this be on. And I'm going to bump this up to 30 because I really want you to know that it's on. I'm going to move this over by 5 pixels, maybe another 10. Yeah, let's move it over another 10. I'm going to move it down 2. You'll notice that I can type in mathematical operations inside of this these bars here, just in case you didn't know that. You can do that and move things around. So that's what I was doing there, in case you were wondering. And then I'm going to move that below the slider. I could leave it above the slider if I wanted to give it a new look and feel where it basically just has the slider underneath the text. But in this case, I'm going to keep the same sort of look and feel that I had before, but I'm just organizing it in a different way. Now I'm going to add another control, which is slider off text. And I'm going to make it a text render extension. And same sort of thing, I'm going to move it down a couple pixels, and I'm going to move it over, I think, 85 pixels. And then I'm going to name this off. And I'm going to bump it up to 30 again. And I may want to make it a little bit wider. So let's add 16. What's going on there? Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe we'll shrink it a little bit here. All right, so I'm going to save the slider button. It's going to ask me for my resources again. I'm okay. Good. Now, if I go back, I can update the references, and we should see the text sort of change as we go through and update the references. So we update the instances. It finds all the references to the component inside of the model, and it'll tell you. Now I can deselect one of these at this point and only make the updates that I want to the ones that I want. So say if there was ones that was instances that you wanted to keep with the old look and feel, you can totally do that. You can uncheck them. I'll show you another way you can do it. You can actually break a component out and basically say, I'm good with this base functionality, but I want to do something different with it, and I'm going to do that later. So you can actually break it out and say detach it from the component. Now, I can hit Control Z. I've updated these, and just to show you how that breakout works, I'm going to hit Control Z and undo the changes. Oops, no, it didn't actually. I think I've gone too far now. I can't actually undo them. But here's what we can do. I will actually maybe change the color on something. So what I will do is I will detach this one. So you can right click on the group here and you can go components, detach from component. And this severs its tie to the component that it was created from. So if you detach, then it's no longer going to be applied when you make changes to the component. So if I go back now and if I change the off to be a different color than black, say I make it yellow to really stand out, I'm losing those designer points, aren't I? Yeah, so then we make that yellow and then we go back and we say update instances. It will only find the two controls now. So it found the two and it will only update the two outside ones. So now we've detached this instance in here from the component. It is no longer updated when you make changes to the component, and you can go off and do whatever you like with this component as you go through. To resize a component, you basically can resize it just like you do inside of Storyboard. You can just drag it out and resize it as you see fit. So that basically, is how you can take a UI element or an element in your UI and reuse it over and over again and maintain that consistent look and feel and functionality throughout your UI. And if we save and we run and we go to the settings screen, you can see that they still, I have to move that off button below. I forgot to move it below the thing. So we can go back and do that. Now you see I've broken that one control out, so I'm not going to actually be able to update that one. So I'd have to go back and fix that one inside of the actual application. But if I update these references, I've actually fixed the problem. And so again, this is one of the powers of components. If you have a bug, if you've copied and pasted that control, you would have to go back and fix it. Whereas now I just have to update the instances and they should be fixed. But here's another nice thing about components. So if we have a new project and we want to share the components there, so test component, I can take, if I go to the Project Explorer, I can take that component that I've created in the templates here, and I can move it over into the templates here. So I can copy and paste that. Now, if I look at my test component, I've now got access to that component and I can drag it out wherever I need it. And I'm actually just going to put in a background so we can see it. I'm going to make this blue. I'm going to resize this to fill the container, and then I got to change the Z order. So then we're going to go back and we'll move this to the bottom. Oops, didn't want to move it inside of that. Move these up. And then we'll resize this to be the same as the container. And we can save it and run it. And you can see that the component now is working inside of my test application. And if you look at your project, what we've done is we've pulled the Lua code over that was associated with this component. So the Lua code, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. The Lua code has been pulled over that was associated with this component. So I didn't write that Lua code, it just brought it in automatically when I brought in the component. The images that are needed by the component have been brought over. Any of the actions needed by the component have been brought over. Variables have been brought over, and you'll see in the animation timeline, I have the slider toggle that was needed to actually make that slider, that button slide happen. So that's really where the power of components comes from, is the fact that you can create these standardized UI templates that you can then drag out and use wherever you need them. and you get that consistent look and feel inside of your UI, and you can share them across projects if you're using multiple projects. So that's pretty much what I have for you today on components. If there's any questions, I will be more than happy to answer them at this point.
Perfect. Thanks, Rodney. I'm just going to take back the control here and just to share the remainder of my screen before we jump into everybody's questions. So just some key takeaways. Definitely, like I said, if you have not checked out the Help Center, definitely give it a look today. There is a wealth of information. Also a great area to submit any kind of support questions you may have, or maybe there's something you have a question about and you would love to see it as a future advanced user training session. Definitely feel free to reach out to us through the Help Center, as well as check out all our past advanced user training sessions. It's a good opportunity to get that kind of deeper dive into a particular aspect of Storyboard, which really helps, making the whole experience of creating GUI applications a lot more efficient for you. So with that being said, let's jump into the questions that you do have. All right, just open up that window. All right, so, and again, if you haven't posed any questions, using the Q&A section of the panel that you have in front of you is how you pose your questions to us. So Rodney, the first question I have for you, how are components different from widgets?
So that's a great question. So widgets are similar in the sense that they usually provide a standardized a standardized way of operating in a UI, right? They provide functionality, but where it becomes hard with a widget is the look and the feel typically are baked into the widget. Now, depending on which widget library you're using, they may be able to, provide options and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, you're using something that is typically pre-compiled or pre-generated, and making changes to that can be difficult. You can't really get your full vision of what you want to be able to do with that widget, just simply because when it was made, it didn't know what your vision was. So the nice thing about components is you're creating them on the fly. So you can create them from that vision that the designer had. So, you're in charge of your own course at this point. You can make that component do whatever you want. And if you don't like it, you can make another one that's totally different. So it's really about leveraging the tools that designer provides you to sort of make these reusable components within the UI.
Perfect. Great. Thanks. Another one I have is, do components reuse resources?
Yes, they do. So this is a standard thing within Storyboard where, if you're referencing that image in multiple places, the Storyboard engine will actually, know that image is being referenced in multiple places, but only load it once and only use it once. So, in that particular case, yes, they only use resources once. Perfect.
That seems to be all the questions that we have today. So with that being said, I want to thank Rodney for your time today, and I want to thank everybody who attended today. Thank you for attending, and look forward to the next session that we have coming up around mid-December. All right, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.